Hey folks, today we're covering Dev Diary 177 for Crusader Kings 3, and this is called A Fresh Coat of Paint. This was a bit of a surprise, but this is going to be covering some improvements the team have made to the map of the game. That's all this covers, just map graphics really, the improvements they've made, how they've changed them, and they're going to show that off. Now I will say straight away, I'm not going to read through the entire Dev Diary. There's a lot of technical stuff here that we don't really need to talk about. It is very interesting to read through though. I will, as always, leave a link to it in the description down below. And for those of you saying like, where is the Coronations Dev Diary? They actually said on Twitter in a reply that we should be getting that on Thursday. So we will be getting news on that next DLC very, very soon. I wonder how close that is then if we're getting a surprise Thursday Dev Diary, because if you've been here for any amount of time, you do know the Crusader Kings Dev Diaries are usually on a Tuesday. So we'll see if that does happen on Thursday. If not, I'm sure we'll get it on Tuesday next week. But let's get into the Dev Diary itself. As I said, all around the changes to the map. And they begin by saying here that over the last couple of years, really ever since the game came out, they've never made a massive change to the map. They've kind of worked the same way ever since the game was released, and obviously before the game was released, in how they build the terrain. I guess previously it wasn't a massive issue because we've not really had map expansion before in Crusader Kings, but obviously with All Under Heaven coming, the map is getting substantially bigger, and it looks like they've taken that opportunity to redo some of the game, how it works, and how it looks. Well, they don't really talk about how it works, although they do mention like how it has changed them, like implementing it themselves, but they don't talk about performance, which is one thing I kind of thought they would talk a little bit more about. They do say there are some game rules where you can reduce the graphical settings now, and that will help with performance, but I would think the fact that they've redone how parts of the map are actually made, we will also see improvements from that. I could be wrong, that's totally me. There's nothing in here saying that's the case. But I think, you know, doing these changes, I think must partially be working towards getting the game to run that a little bit better for those of you who do have issues with how the game runs. Now, as I said, there's a lot of information here. The next thing I'm actually going to just skip to is them describing what is changing. And then they have a bunch of before and after map. And then we can look through those and you can let me know what you think in the comments down below. So the first thing here is surface polish. So the map text now has a more subtle texture and softer appearance. You'll see that in a second in the maps. The political map has a higher resolution with less apparent tiling. Again, you're going to see that in a second. I kind of get what they're talking about. The water now has more varied detail and color depending on where you are in the world. So water won't just be that same color wherever you are. It will be different depending in which location you are, and I guess maybe what terrain is around you. They've also improved wave patterns along the shore, and then overall the scale and wave texture is a little bit better to make it look more realistic. They've also changed effects so they blend together more naturally between zoom levels, removing some long-standing pop-in and glitches when you're moving in and out of the map, basically. So it's a little bit smoother. Things load that little bit better. Again, I would imagine there's some performance improvements from doing this and seeing how that changes. So the first thing I will actually show off before we cover what else has changed is that new political map mode. You can see that on the screen now. You can see Norway, Sweden. This is obviously Scandinavia. They're showing off Sweden for some reason. And, you know, you can see the changes here. Now, it's very hard here to tell the difference. I mean, you can see some minor changes here, but because there's no before and after, I guess it's kind of harder to see them, which I think is a good thing. I don't want the map to look entirely different. You know, we load into this patch whenever it happens, and the game looks totally different. I don't really want that to happen. I don't know. I'm used to how Crusader Kings looks, I guess. So we will see, obviously, once this is implemented. You can see, though, in the next screenshot, this is them talking about, like, how the different terrain types, like in this example, they've got grasslands, hills, some plains, and things like that. And they're saying, like, these will now merge together. I guess it will look a little less like if you play, like, Civilization, where the tiles kind of all grouped together, and then you could see the division between two different tile types really obviously. We don't have it like that in the game at the moment, of course, but they're showing off here with this new kind of procedure in doing it, how they can have more, I guess, like refined or like slight changes. You can see that in the screenshot. You've got hills, grassland. I'm sure there's some plains here as well. And it looks that little bit more natural, I think, in this screenshot. Again, they're going to show more of this off in a second, so we won't talk about it too much here. The last thing they're going to talk about here is actually lighting, and you can see that in a screenshot here as well. So they say they've reworked how terrain lighting works. This should make things pop that little bit more and also give you more realistic shadows. You can see that on this screenshot. You can see the shadows in the hills, and then I guess the buildings stand out that little bit more as well. And then the other thing they say they've done here is they've made cloud cover actually move across the map depending on what kind of map mode you're in. and you'll see it kind of move around the land and things like that. They do say you could turn that off. It does affect performance, so you can turn that off and it won't happen. But I think they've really tried to make the map look that little bit more alive, which is something we have talked about previously, making the map look that little bit more interesting. Maybe get some city sprawl happening in the future a little bit more, you know, those kind of things. But this is a step towards that direction, making lighting look better, making the game just look that little bit more interesting. Like I say, there's much more they talk about, but it's all really around those major kind of points that I've talked about. But do go read it if you are interested. Now, what I'll do next is show you the before and afters that they showed off here. And the first one here, this is around mountains, and they talk about how like the Himalayas are going to expand and how they wanted to make the Himalayas look more realistic. And you can see that in these two screenshots. Like, it's a lot of difference here. I'm going to put them both on the screen. They might be quite small, but again, you can see them in the full dev dar if you want to. The first one, the before, you can see mountains like they are mountains, but they don't look like very impactful. They look kind of weird in some places. I guess now you look at the game in this way, you're like, oh yeah, that does look kind of bad in some ways. And then you can see in the after one, really what they're talking about, they wanted to make like the Himalayas look more natural. Hills and mountains look like they've got like natural valleys, natural cliff edges and things like that. And you can see that in the difference here. You can see those steep mountain edges. You can see the ravines. There's one in the middle there where there's like a town in the middle of a valley and things like that. So I really like how this looks. I think it does make the map look better. You'll have to let me know what you think about that as we look through these, but I really like how these mountains look now. I hope there's nothing where it looks like too janky and you get like weird, like very steep cliffs where it's trying to like render different mountain types and things like that. I'm sure there isn't going to be. They've put a lot of effort into this by the sounds of it. And I think just looking at these two screenshots, I do like how it looks in the new version versus the old version. The next set of screenshots they're going to show off is Iceland. You can see the before and after here. Now, weirdly here, I think I actually prefer the before to the after. I think it just makes the mountains, I don't know, I guess they look more realistic, but I don't know, like it makes the whole like island just look weird. But again, to me, as an uncultured person around Iceland, it's probably way more realistic in the second picture than it is in the first one. I guess it's just getting used to how that now looks versus how it has always looked previously, but I don't know. I guess looking at it now, I actually like how it looks. It does look more realistic as a mountain range. It isn't as like bobbly, I guess, as the before, where you can see like little weird mountains and hills, and it looks like somebody has painted it in an art program. Whereas the second one almost looks like a Google Earth search or something like that. So I don't know. Let me know what you think with all of these. I do actually quite like it now. Re-looking at it, I guess actually it looks fine. It's just, I guess, getting used to this new style almost, with the new lighting, with this new mountain tech or whatever they're using. Like, it does look different, and I think it is going to take a while to get used to how this looks. You can see that in the next one. This is a before and after of Spain, and you can see the before, kind of one color. You've got the mountains, you've got some hillside there as well, and then you can see in the after, those mountains look more impressive. They look more like mountains and not like slightly kind of bobbly hills like they did previously. And you can also see again where they've kind of merged together or kind of more seamlessly connected the land. You can see in the before, it's very green, you know, green grassland, whatever. And then in the second screenshot, it looks that little bit more interesting, I suppose. It looks like there's more going on. The trees kind of pop out that little bit more as well. And I don't know, I think it just looks nicer. Again, it does look quite different to the before, does the after, but I like how it looks. It does make it look different. If you look at the coastline on the right-hand side, you can see in the before picture, it's just some hills next to the water. In the after one, it's actually a cliff face against the water, which is really nice. I actually like how that looks now. It makes it a little bit more interesting. I think it will make it look more realistic because even Spain in game, we all know how hilly it is, the plains in Spain and all that kind of stuff. But the map in Crusader Kings looks very flat for the most part. It looks like this is going to bring some real elevation to it. And especially like those impassable mountains, I think are going to look impassable in game rather than how they did previously. Next, they're going to show off some of Arabia here, obviously. The river, all the like floodplains and things like that. The before, very green, very, you know, green grasslands, plains, the river there, the buildings. And then you look at the after image, the new version of how it will look. And again, you can see the more floodplain look to it. And then on the right-hand side, kind of like the top right-hand side, you can see how the kind of plains almost like merge into it. I think there's a lot more definition between terrain types with this. Maybe just looking at the map, you'll be able to more easily spot the different terrains using this system, because previously things kind of looked roughly the same in many places, whereas it looks like in this screenshot at least, you can see the floodplains versus the more plains or drylands or something like that. Anyway, again, let me know what you think. The next one is going to be Scotland, and this really is going to show how mountains look different in this map. You can see the before and after, Inverness, Argyll, all that area. Again, in Crusader Kings, it looks, I'm not going to say like flat, it obviously looks like there's a lot of mountains there, but in this new after image they've shown off, you can see all those mountains around Argyll, Ross, Inverness. You can definitely see, oh, this is all mountains. This is going to be very hard to attack. You know, don't attack into mountains. Who would ever do that in Crusader Kings? And this is really going to help you. And again, you can see like Fife, the bit around Edinburgh and Glasgow, it looks a lot more like different there. There's a lot more grassland. It kind of pops that little bit more than it does in the before image. The trees, I guess, look that little bit different. I'm not sure, to be honest, if I like how the trees look in the new map version. We'll have to see it running. In the top right-hand corner, it looks kind of weird compared to the old one. I don't know, I think in the old style or the current style, if we play today, I think the trees kind of merge in that little bit nicer. I think they stand out maybe a little bit too much in the new map mode. They will show that off a little bit more in the next ones. These are all around India, and you can see the before and after. Now, this is a little bit different because the after, there's a lot of like purple and pinks in it. I don't know if they're getting like special trees. If you saw the dev diaries for Japan that they're bringing in, we are going to have the Sakura trees, is it they're called? You know, the pink trees, and they're going to be on the map, and it's going to look really, really cool. Whereas for India, I don't know if there's something similar here or if it's just a graphical way the picture was taken. But if you look at the after, there's a lot more like purple and pinks going on, and not just the borders of the realms. The hills almost look pinkish. So I don't know if that's like an intentional thing for that area. But again, you can see here how the map is going to look very different compared to how it looks now. You can see the mountains on the left-hand side. You can see like the different greens and the different trees and things like that around the rest of the map as well. So I think a good showcase here. And then the next one they're going to show off is Italy. So this is the center around Rome. You can see before and after. And again, you can see the hills in the middle. You can see the mountains. You can see that the terrain, I think, looks that little bit different. As I've been saying all the way through this, I think it almost makes the terrain heights much more pronounced, much more obvious. You can see that kind of spine down Italy here a lot better than I think you can in the current mode. It makes those look more impactful, and I think will make you maybe play that a little bit different with your armies maybe. I'm not too sure, but at least I think it does make the map look that little bit more kind of impactful. Different areas you can see immediately. You can kind of see just over the water there in the Balkans, that kind of steep mountain face you can see immediately, which you don't really get in game. You just get some hills and mountain tiles, as you can see in that before one. And although you can see its mountains, I think, again, it looks that little bit more interesting. And then the last one they're going to show off here, we've seen something around this previously. This is a part of Japan in All Under Heaven. They did show this off in the Japan dev diary, but it wasn't quite as zoomed in as it looks here. And you can see, obviously, Japan, a very mountainous country, and that really gets shown off here, especially on the right-hand side where there's a lot of snow. But you can see even on like that southern bit over to the west-hand side of it as well, you can see how mountainous this area is. And even like at a glance, this is one thing I always talk about in video games, is if you can see information at a glance that you don't then have to look somewhere else for, that is such a good way for a UI to work. And sometimes when I'm playing, I have to go to the terrain UI map mode. Okay, where is this terrain? Where does it start? Where does it end? It isn't always like that, but I have had to do that previously. Whereas I think here you can immediately see, okay, this is definitely hills and mountains. This area in the middle, okay, that looks like it's some kind of valley with grasslands or something like that. And then like the edge of the steep mountains, that's probably going to be like forested areas, things like that as well, from how you can see it on this map. So very interesting to see here the changes they've made. Again, let me know what you think. That's all the screenshots they showed off. Again, I have linked them in the description down below if you want to go take a look at them in like full zoomed in mode and all that kind of stuff. I like how it looks. I think some of it looks a little bit janky. Like I say, the trees in the Scotland one looked a little bit weird, but again, that might be just the screenshot they took. And again, the same with India with like the purpley pinkish tinge to some things. I don't know if that's just a weird screenshot they took or there's some kind of plant there that they have kind of shown off in game now to really make it look different to other areas in the game. And again, them saying like rivers will look different, that's going to help different places look different as well. So I really like that they've done this. Again, hopefully it does improve performance as well. That would be fantastic, especially for you guys on lower systems and things like that. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. They do say this is using the same tech as they've given to modders previously, because I was worried like all these mods like Game of Thrones, where they've made a new world in the game, Like, this is going to be horrific for them. But they do say that they are using the same tools modders have. So I guess it sounds like it isn't going to cause them to have to rebuild their entire map. I'm sure they'll have to redo parts of it. And at the end of the day, like, okay, they are taking consideration into mods, but ultimately, like, it's their game. They've made changes. Mods have to catch up with that. That's just how that is. And modders know that. So it isn't anything too crazy. Sure, there'll be at least 1 or 2 comments saying, like, we'll never get fully updated mods. There's always something coming, which I guess, to be honest, is that a bad thing? We're getting content so often. Mods are having to chase after it. I'd rather it be that than we get no content, and mods are always up to date. Now, the last thing I will show off here, I'm just going to put them on the screen as we finish. They showed off the new paper map for the new bits of All Under Heaven. You can see those on the screen at the moment. They look really cool. They have got some other things as well. They show off India and Europe and kind of the paper map version of them. Some new illustrations and things like that on there. Looks very, very nice. It looks really cool, actually. So I can't wait to see these in game. I will say there is another part of this dev diary where they just go over changes to the titles that are coming in All Under Heaven. So really like where the kingdoms were, which duchies were in there. Again, I'm not going to cover that in this video. It is interesting, but it's not something that we all need to talk about, really. But do let me know in the comments if there's anything cool that you see in there. I have read through it. It does look interesting, but I don't think it's really worth covering on the channel that much because, again, we haven't played any of this content. So it's changes that many of you won't even be aware of anyway when they do come into the game. I guess they do show off the map graphics in there a little bit more, so you can take a look at that as well. But anyway, guys, we're going to leave it there for today. Hopefully you've enjoyed this, a surprise dev diary. As I said, they do say on Thursday we should be getting a Coronations dev diary. I imagine we'll get like 1 or 2 dev diaries for that. It's only an event pack. There is going to be some mechanics around it, so I would imagine maybe 2 dev diaries, and then it will come out maybe the end of the month or something like that. I guess we'll find out more on Thursday if that dev diary does appear. But as always, hit that like button if you've enjoyed today's video. It's good to have some Crusader Kings news once again. And then once they get through the Coronations DLC dev diaries, they'll be straight back onto the All Under Heaven dev diaries and showing us more stuff around that as well. So anyway, we'll leave it there for today. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I cover the dev diaries, news, I do discussion videos. I stream every Tuesday and Thursday doing achievement campaigns, showing off mods, all that good stuff. So do subscribe if you enjoy it. And I'm also covering EU5 in a very similar manner on the channel. So if you're looking forward to that game coming as well, do subscribe. Plenty coming in the future. But we'll leave it there for today, and I'll see you all next time.